Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie. I am planning to take the MCAT in 2020 summertime, and I decided to create this video because I wanted to, sometimes you don't feel like studying, and I just wanted to do a quick reading of the MCAT BROS final PDF of the Psych Soch, and we are all at this current time, if you're watching this in the future, we are all quarantined and we're at home, we're studying, it's exhausting. And so the times where you just want to go for a walk and not really think and sit and study, I think this is just a wonderful opportunity for you to sometimes just listen to the material, become familiar with the information, and then when you're going back to study, you can do some recall and remember that you went through listening to this audio. So this is just a test. I'd like to give you some information really quickly. I sometimes have ambulance or babies crying in the background because my neighbors are close by. It's kind of a small apartment complex I live, so I apologize for that in advance, but I hope you guys can enjoy this reading of the MCAT BROS final PDF. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'm so grateful to the MCAT BROS for creating this summary for us. And I just thought I would read it. This is not my material. This is their material. And I just wanted to give the opportunity for people who wanted to just listen and work out or walk or do whatever and not have to actually sit down and read. So this is just Psych Soch. I'm going to try and get through a few pages, and then I'm going to create different sections, and then I'll do my best to make a playlist so that you can listen to it as you commute when we get back to commuting, which it will happen. I hope. Let me know in the comments if you're in the future and we never got a chance to commute again and everything just went like home forever. Okay, I'm sure that's not going to happen. Anyway, let's get to it. Please join me on page 8. Page 8 is sensory perception. It's the very first page. If you're reading along, and if you're not reading along, then just go ahead and listen. I'll do my best to, by the way, I'll do my best to be as clear and coherent, but sometimes I mispronounce words and sometimes I speak too fast, so I'll do my best to go slow and be clear. Sensory perception. Visual cues. When we look at something, we need to make inferences. Visual cues allow us to perceptually organize, that's in bold, by taking into account the following cues: depth, form, motion, and constancy. So the 4 cues are depth, form, motion, and constancy. Humans have 2 eyes, which allow them to receive visual cues from their environment by binocular cues. These give them a sense of depth. Bold. So binocular cues is in bold, that's a term, and depth is in bold. This gives them retinal disparity. Eyes are about 2.5 inches apart, which allows for humans to get slightly different views of objects around the world. It gives humans an idea on a depth. So retinal disparity is the idea of depth. Convergence gives humans an idea of depth as well as Convergence gives humans an idea of depth as well, based on how much eyeballs are turned. This gives humans a sense of depth. So things that are far away, the muscles of the eyes are relaxed. Things that are close to us, muscles of eyes contract. Humans also have visual cues they receive which they do not need 2 eyes for. These are called, in bold, monocular cues. These give humans a sense of form of an object. Relative size. Relative size can be inferred with one eye. The closer an object it is perceived as being bigger. This gives us an idea of form. Imposition or overlap, perception that one object is in front of another. An object that is in front is closer. Interposition or overlap is in bold. And these are the terms. Relative height, which is boldened. Things that are higher are perceived to be further away those that are lower. So, for example, there is a picture in which there are 3 bricks, and although they're on the same level, it looks, the way it's drawn, that they have one that is actually higher, but they're actually all the same level. And the reason is because of the term relative height. Things higher are perceived to be further away than those that are lower. Shading and contour. Using light and shadows to perceive form. Depth/contours. Craters/mountains. Monocular cues can also give a sense of motion. The term motion parallax, or in quotations, relative motion, things farther away move slower than things further away move slower than things that are closer moves faster. So the example for this is you're looking at an airplane versus looking at a car on a highway. Say you're on the highway and you're sitting still and you're looking at the distance of a airplane. The airplane is going to look like it's moving really slow, but as we all know, airplanes go very fast in the sky, but it's further away, so it looks like it's going slow. Whereas a car that's on the highway and you're close by the car and you're watching them go by, it seems like the car is zooming by faster than the airplane. But because of this term, motion parallax or relative motion, things further away move slower than closer moves faster. Hope that clears that up. Monocular cue of constancy. Constancy, our perception of objects, doesn't change even if the image cast on the retina is different. Different types of constancy include size constancy, shape constancy, color constancy. Size constancy, one that appears larger because it's closer. We still think it's the same size. Shape constancy, changing shape, still maintains the same shape perception. For example, a door opening means the shape is changing, but we still believe the door is a rectangle. Color constancy. Despite changes in lighting which change the image color falling on our retina, we understand or perceive that the object is the same color. So, for example, you might be outside and you have on a deep purple, royal purple t-shirt, and say it's 6 o'clock and the sun's starts setting, or 7 o'clock depending where you are, and then all of a sudden the sun set, it's a lot darker. Now all of a sudden it appears that the t-shirt is black, where actually the t-shirt is a violet deep royal purple. But despite the changes in lighting, the image or the color of our retina, we understand and we perceive that the object is the same color. We do our best to maintain that constancy of color. Okay, next topic. We went from sensory adaptation to Now we're doing sensory adaptation. Sensory adaptation. Our senses are adaptable and they can change their sensitivity to stimuli. Our senses are adaptable and they can change their sensitivity to stimuli. Hearing adaptation. Inner ear muscle. A high noise, the muscle contracts. This dampens the vibration in inner ear and protects the drum. It takes a few seconds to kick in. So this does not work for large and loud noises like a gunshot, but it works best for being at a rock concert for the entire afternoon. So hearing adaptation takes longer. Touch, another adaptation. We have temperature receptors that desensitize over time. Smell. Desensitize receptors in your nose to the molecule sensory information over time. The one I like to use for this is incredibly gross, but I think it's a good idea to think about it in a gross way so you can remember it on the MCAT. When you use a restroom, when you first go to the restroom, it smells horrible. And when you're in there for about 20 minutes, hopefully it's not taking you 20 minutes to be in the restroom. But if you're in there for 3 to 5 minutes, and I'm sorry, this is a gross analogy, but the grosser it is, the better it helps you to remember. Over time, you get used to the smell. And so your sensory, your sense of smell, it's not that it's gotten worse, it's just that it has habituated to the current smell. So it's the desensitized receptors in your nose to the molecule of the sensory information over time. Over time, you don't really smell that anymore. Say if your spouse, for example, walked in, they would unfortunately get exposed to that. And so say they stayed in there, washed their hands, and were combing their hair. I don't know why somebody would do this, but over time, their nose would get desensitized. Horrible analogy, but hopefully it'll help you understand why our noses get desensitized and what that means. Proprioception, another sensory adaptation, is the sense of the position of the body in space. Sense of balance / where you are in space. So if you've ever closed your eyes and decided to walk throughout your room, you would be able to feel around and try and figure out where the light is and turn the light on if it's late at night because of proprioception. Try that sometime. It's really kind of crazy. Experiment. Goggles that make everything upside down and the perception of the world, and eventually you would accommodate over time and flip it back over. Next adaptation, sight. Down regulation or up regulation to light intensity. So for down regulation, that's light adaptation. When it's bright out, the pupils constrict and they let less light in. Less light enters the back of the eye, and the desensitization of rods and cones become desensitized to the light. Up regulation, you can guess, is the opposite. Is dark regulation, and the pupils will dilate and the rods and cones will start to synthesize light sensitive molecules. So hopefully that's clear. Again, if you're in the dark and you're walking around trying to find something, for example, a snack, and you are in a really dark room, your pupils will dilate to try and let more light in, and the rods and cones will start synthesizing those light-sensitive molecules. But notice that, say, when you open the fridge, you kind of have to brace your eyes and they constrict when the excess light comes into the eye. So hopefully that gives you an idea of sight, upregulation and downregulation. Weber's law, I should say. Weber's law. So, first bullet point, 2v 2.05 pounds of weight feel the exact same. So I have two things. One is only 0.05 heavier, so they're going to feel the same. Whereas 2 versus 2.2 pounds, the weight difference would be quite noticeable. The threshold at which you're able to notice a change in any sensation is the just noticeable difference, or the JND. So now take a 5-pound weight. In this case, if you replace 5.2, if you replace by 5.2 weight, might not be noticeable. But if you take a 5.5 pound, it will be noticeable. Thus, Weber's law is delta I JND / I initial intensity is equal to K constant. For example, the 0.2 divided by 2 is equal to 0.5 divided by 5 equals 0.1. Change must be 0.1 of initial intensity to be noticeable. If we take Weber's law and we rearrange it, we can see that it predicts a linear relationship between incremental threshold and background intensity. Delta I is equal to IK. If you plot I against delta I, it's constant. So those are all the bullet points under Weber's law. Absolute threshold of sensation. Absolute threshold of sensation is the minimum intensity of stimulus needed to detect a particular stimulus 50% of the time. Again, the minimum intensity of stimulus needed to detect a particular stimulus 50% of the time. At low levels of stimulus, some subjects can detect and some can't. At low levels of stimulus, some subjects can detect and some can't. Also, there are differences in an individual. Not the same as difference threshold, JND. That's the smallest difference that can be detected 50% of the time. Related but different concepts. Absolute threshold can be influenced by a number of factors, not just a fixed number. Again, absolute threshold can be influenced by a number of factors, not a fixed, unchanged number. Particularly, this is influenced by a variety of psychological states. Number 1, expectations. Are you expecting a text? 2, experience. How familiar are you with it? For example, are you familiar of the phone's text vibration? 3, motivation. For example, are you interested in the response of the text? 4, alertness. Are you awake or are you drowsy? Will you notice the text if you are awake? And here's a new term, subliminal. Subliminal stimuli. Stimuli below the absolute threshold of sensation. So if any of that was unclear, I highly suggest going back, reviewing, and taking a look at page 11 that shows a very beautiful graph that has on the x-axis intensity and on the y-axis correct detections. And so this graph would give you a better sense of the absolute threshold of sensing or sensation. And we're talking about sensation, sensing a particular stimulus. Half of the time. Okay. So, moving on, and then I'll end this here because this has already been a 20-minute reading. And so you want to take it in. Here's the last bullet. We're going to be talking about somatosensation. Somatosensation or receive. This is receiving information about types of somatosensation, the intensity, the timing, and the location. Types. The types are temperature, thermoception, pressure, mechanoception, pain, nociception, and position, which is proprioception. Intensity. How quickly neurons fire for us to notice. Slow is low intensity. Fast is high intensity. Remember, slow, low, high, fast. Timing. Again, timing is under somatosensation. Timing. Neuron encodes 3 ways of timing: non-adapting, fast adapting, or slow adapting. Non-adapting, neuron consistency fires at a constant rate. Slow adapting, neurons fire in beginning of stimulus and calms down after a while. Fast adapting, neurons fire as soon as a stimulus starts and stops firing again when stimulus stops. Location. Location-specific stimuli by nerves are sent to the brain, and it relies on dermatomes. This graph that is located underneath somatoception would be a great opportunity to take a look at how they separate the types of somatosensation divided into intensity, timing, and location. And so this would be a great time if you're sleeping right now. Hopefully you're not sleeping. But if you're resting right now and just listening to me reading, or if you're walking, go back to page 12 and take a look at the graph that was so creatively made by the MCAT Bros. And we'll stop there because we're at 22 minutes. I hope this reading has been helpful. Join me on the next one on video 2, where I start on page 12, and we'll start with vestibular system, and we'll get right started. Thank you.